They walked for months through hell expecting a hero's welcome. When they finally reached the depot, the ashes were still warm. The rescue team had left 9 hours ago. They were not just abandoned. They were erased by time itself. The silence is heavier than the heat. It is late afternoon on the 21st of April, 1861. The sun is a bleeding wound on the western horizon, painting the Australian Outback in violent shades of ochre and bruised purple. 3 figures stumble through the Gibber Plains. They can no longer be called men. They are anatomy diagrams, wrapped in rotting flannel. Their skin is blackened by the sun and stretched tight over protruding cheekbones. Their lips are cracked fissures that bleed when they breathe. Robert O'Hara Burke leads them. Though he can barely lift his boots from the dust, he lurches forward, driven by a manic, feverish hope. He sees the white trunks of the coolabah trees ahead. Cooper Creek, the depot, salvation. In his mind, he smells roasting meat and hears the low murmur of comfortable conversation. He imagines the taste of tea with sugar. He tries to shout to the others, to Wills and King, who drag themselves behind him like ghosts, but his throat is too dry. Only a croak escapes. They crash through the dry scrub and stumble into the clearing. Burke falls to his knees, not in prayer, but in exhaustion. He waits for the shout of the sentry. He waits for the bark of the dogs. He waits for the hand of William Brough to pull him up and offer him water. There is nothing. The stockade is empty. The ash in the fire pit is gray. The silence rushes back in, deafening and absolute. The wind whistles through the twisted branches of the eucalyptus, mocking them. A crow laughs from a high branch. Panic, cold and sharp, pierces the delirium of heat stroke. They crawl through the abandoned campsite, hands shaking as they touch the cold stones of the fire circle. They find nothing. No food, no horses, no people. Then Wills sees it. The tree, the massive coolabah standing like a tombstone in the center of the camp. The bark has been slashed away, revealing the pale wood beneath. The letters are fresh, raw, and screaming. D-I-G. They tear at the earth with their bare hands, breaking fingernails, ignoring the pain. They dig like animals. They pull up a camel trunk and a bottle. Wills smashes the bottle open and unfurls the note inside with trembling fingers. His eyes scan the paper. He reads the date. He reads the time. He looks up at Burke, and the light dies in his eyes. The ink is barely dry. The relief party did not leave a week ago. They did not leave yesterday. They left this morning. They missed salvation by 9 hours. The horizon swallows the sun, and the darkness takes them. To understand the silence of the grave, we must first drown in the roar of the crowd, rewind the clock, travel back 8 months from that desolate tree at Cooper Creek. It is August, 1860. We are in Royal Park, Melbourne. The air does not smell of rot and dry dust here. It smells of perfume, horse manure, and fresh grass. It smells of money. 15,000 people have gathered to witness the departure of the Victorian exploring expedition. It is a carnival. It is a celebration of colonial arrogance. The colony of Victoria, flushed with gold rush wealth, wants to plant its flag on the northern coast. They do not want a survey. They want a conquest. And for this conquest, they have chosen a leader who knows nothing of the bush. Robert O'Hara Burke sits atop his gray horse, waving to the cheering masses. He is an Irishman, a police superintendent, a man of impulsive passion and charming recklessness. He has no beard yet, just a heavy mustache and eyes that burn with the fever of destiny. He is a man who would charge a cannon with a saber. He is the worst possible man to lead a survival mission. Behind him stretches the caravan. It is a monument to absurdity. This is not a lean team of survivalists. It is a traveling circus of Victorian excess. They have packed 6 tons of firewood, assuming the continent is barren. They have packed a cedar dining table with matching chairs. They have packed grooming kits, stationery, and heavy woolen uniforms suitable for an English winter. And then there are the beasts. 26 camels, imported from India, tower over the crowd. They are alien creatures, sneezing and groaning, their long necks swaying like snakes. The locals stare at them in wonder, unaware that these animals will soon be the only food keeping the men alive. The procession moves out, but it moves like a dying snake. The wagons are too heavy. They sink into the mud before they even leave the city limits. What should have been a sprint becomes a crawl. They travel only a few miles a day. Tempers flare. Officers resign. The heat begins to rise as the greenery of the coast fades into the gray scrub of the interior. The red dust begins to coat their fine clothes. The reality of the continent starts to chew on the edges of their optimism. By October, they reach Menindee, the last outpost of civilization on the Darling River. The heat is now a physical weight. The water is getting scarce. Burke is furious at the slow pace. He stares at the map, his patience snapping like a dry twig. He looks at the heavy wagons, the dining tables, the libraries of books. He makes a decision that seals their fate. He decides to split the party. He will take a small, mobile group and dash for the north. He will take the strongest men and the best animals. He will leave the bulk of the supplies behind to catch up later. It is a gamble born of impatience. It is a race against a ghost. On the 19th of October, 1860, Burke rides out of Menindee. He takes William Wills, his second in command. A man of science who is too polite to challenge his leader is madness. He takes John King, the young soldier. They leave the safety of the known world and cross the invisible line into the void. The heavy wooden door of the Outback slams shut behind them. They are light, they are fast, and they are woefully unprepared for the hell that awaits them in the red center. The cheering crowds of Melbourne are 1,000,000 miles away now. There is only the horizon, shimmering and shifting, promising water, but delivering only dust. Victory is usually painted in gold, but for the Victorian exploring expedition, it was painted in gray mud. It is February 1861. They have done the impossible. They have crossed the continent from south to north. They stand at the edge of the Gulf of Carpentaria, the goal that has obsessed an entire colony. But there is no crashing surf. There is no blue horizon. There is only a choking, impenetrable wall of mangroves. The ground is a treacherous soup of tidal sludge that sucks the boots off their feet. The air is thick with mosquitoes that rise in black clouds, biting until the men's eyes are swollen shut. They can smell the salt of the ocean, but they cannot see it. They have walked 2,000 miles. For a view of a swamp, Burke and Wills check their compasses. They verify the coordinates. They mark a tree. That is it. There is no champagne to uncork, only the lukewarm, brackish water in their canteens. The adrenaline that fueled their mad dash north evaporates, leaving only exhaustion. They turn their backs on the sea they never saw and face the south. The return journey begins, and the continent, having lured them in deep, now decides to close its jaws. The weather turns violently against them. The relentless sun is replaced by the relentless rain of the tropical monsoon. For weeks, they are battered by water. Their clothes rot on their bodies. Their leather saddles grow green mold. But the rain is not a blessing. It turns the ground into glue. The camels, those ships of the desert, begin to sink and slide. They groan under the weight of their own humps. One by one, the animals falter. When the rain stops, the heat returns with a vengeance, baking the mud into concrete. The food supplies are dwindling. The salt pork is gone. The biscuits are crumbs. They look at the animals now, not as transport, but as meat. They shoot the weakest camels first. Then they shoot Billy, the horse. They do not waste anything. They boil the meat until it is gray and stringy. They crack the bones for marrow. They eat the skin. The fresh meat gives them a moment of strength. But it is not enough to combat the slow, creeping starvation that hollows out their cheeks and clouds their minds. Discipline begins to fracture along with their bodies. Charlie Gray, the sailor, is the first to crumble. He is a big man, and big men burn fuel faster. The hunger drives him mad. One night, while the others sleep the sleep of the dead, Gray creeps toward the dwindling sack of flour. He mixes a paste behind a tree, shoving the raw, sticky dough into his mouth. Burke catches him. The leader's reaction is instant and primal. He does not see a starving man. He sees a mutineer. Burke strikes Gray. He beats him in the flickering light of the campfire, the sound of fist on flesh echoing in the empty vastness. Gray takes the beating, too weak to fight back, flour and blood mixing on his face. From that moment, Gray is a dead man walking. He lags behind. He complains that his legs are turned to stone. The others think he is malingering, playing up his injuries from the beating. They shout at him. They leave him behind, forcing him to stumble after them in the dark. But Gray is not acting. He is dying. On the morning of the 17th of April, he does not wake up. He lies curled in the red dust, a bundle of rags and bones. Now comes the final, cruelest twist of fate. Burke, Wills, and King are ghosts themselves, but they still possess a shred of Victorian decency. They cannot leave a white man to the dingoes. They decide to bury him, but they are so weak that digging a grave in the baked earth is like digging through iron. It takes them an entire day, one full day of hacking at the ground, sweating out their last drops of moisture to cover Charlie Gray. They fashion a crude cross. They say a prayer. They rest. They do not know it yet, but that act of mercy is their death warrant. That single day spent digging a hole in the middle of nowhere is the difference between life and death. Because 4 days' march to the south, at the Cooper Creek Depot, the clock is ticking down. The relief party is packing their wagons. If they had left Gray to the birds, they would have made it, but they dug. And as they sleep beside the fresh grave, the sun sets on their only chance of survival. The desert does not kill you with drama. It kills you with geometry. They are trapped in a circle. Robert O. Hara Burke. William Wills and John King are now prisoners of the creek. They have exhausted their supplies. They have exhausted their hope. Now, they exhaust their logic. Instead of following the clear, fresh tracks of the relief party back towards the south, Burke looks at the map. He looks at the terrifying expanse of the Strzelecki Desert to the west. He points a trembling finger towards a place named Mount Hopeless. He believes there is a cattle station there, 150 miles away. It is a delusion. It is a phantom settlement. But Burke is a man who would rather die walking into the unknown than admit he was wrong and chase the men who left him. They load the last 2 camels. They drag their bodies away from the water. But the desert pushes back. The camels sink into the mud. One gets trapped in a ravine, its long legs snapping like dry kindling. They have to shoot it. They cut the meat from its bones while the animal is still warm, blood slicking their hands, flies descending in a humming black shroud. They are too weak to carry the meat. They are too weak to walk. The desert spits them back out, forcing them to crawl back to Cooper Creek. Now, they are not explorers. They are scavengers, and they are not alone. Shadows move among the coolabah trees. The Yandru Wanda people appear. They step out of the landscape as if they are made of the earth itself. Their skin shines with health. They carry nets full of fish. They hold out cakes made of ground seeds. They offer life. But to Burke, they are monsters. His Victorian mind cannot process their kindness. He sees savages. He sees threats. When the Yandru Wanda draw near, offering food to the skeleton men, Burke pulls his revolver. The metal is hot in his hand. He fires a shot over their heads. The crack of the gun shatters the silence. The Yandru Wanda scatter, vanishing like smoke. Burke has just frightened away the only people who know how to keep them alive. Left alone, they turn to the earth. They watch what the birds eat. They find the Nardoo fern. It grows in the dried mud. Little clover like leaves with hard, woody spores. They think they have found manna. They fall upon the plants, gathering the seeds by the thousands. From dawn until dusk, the only sound in the camp is the rhythmic pounding of stones. Clack, clack, clack. They grind the seeds into a gray flour. They mix it with water. They bake it in the ashes. They eat until their stomachs are distended and tight. But the Nardoo is a traitor. The Yandru Wanda know that the seed must be roasted to neutralize its toxins. Burke and Wills do not know this. They boil it. They eat it raw. They are feeding themselves poison. Inside their bodies, a microscopic horror begins. The raw Nardoo contains thiaminase, an enzyme that destroys vitamin B1. The more they eat, the more they deplete their bodies of the very nutrient they need to process energy. It is a cruel, biological paradox. They are starving to death on a full stomach. The paralysis starts in the legs. Wills feels it first. He tries to stand, but his knees buckle. It feels as though his muscles are turning into water. He looks at his legs, withered sticks, resting in the red dust, and commands them to move. They do not obey. Then comes the cold. The desert nights are freezing. But this cold comes from within. It is the chill of a metabolism shutting down. They wrap themselves in rotting blankets, shivering violently under the indifferent stars. They eat more Nardoo, desperate for strength, shoveling the gray paste into their mouths, unaware that every spoonful accelerates the decay. They are eating their own death. The hallucinations begin. The wind sounds like a brass band. The twisted trees look like women in ball gowns. They lie in the dirt, paralyzed, watching the moon slide across the sky, waiting for a dawn that brings no heat. June arrives, not with warmth, but with a biting, dry frost. The end of the line is a pile of branches and leaves. They call it a gunya, a crude shelter that offers no real protection against the universe. Underneath this fragile roof, William John Wills accepts his fate. He is 27 years old. He has the mind of a scientist, but his body has become a cage of dead nerves and wasted muscle. He cannot stand. His legs are heavy logs that do not belong to him. He looks at his commander, Robert O. Hara Burke, and he looks at the young soldier, John King. He sees their hesitation. He sees the guilt in their sunken eyes. He knows that as long as they drag him, they will all die. So, the younger man makes the decision the older man cannot. Wills demands to be left behind. It is a moment of terrifying clarity. He asks for a little water. He asks for a supply of Nardoo. He asks for his diary. That is all. It is a sacrifice pact made of logic. Burke and King gather their remaining strength. They do not say goodbye with speeches. There is no breath left for sentiment. They simply turn their backs. Wills watches them go. He watches the two dark shapes stagger away into the shimmering heat haze until they are nothing but specks of dust against the endless red horizon. He is alone. The silence that descends on the gunya is absolute. Wills opens his diary. His hand shakes, but his mind is crystal clear. He dips the pen. The scratch of the nib on the paper is the only sound in the world. He checks his pulse. It is slow, 48 beats per minute. It is the rhythm of a clock winding down. He writes his final entry. He does not scream at God. He does not curse the empire. He writes with a chilling, ironic calm. He compares himself to Mr. Micawber, a character from a Dickens novel, waiting for something to turn up. He is dying in the most desolate place on earth, yet his mind is in a London parlor. He closes the book. The cold creeps into his marrow. He waits. 2 days march away. Robert O. Hara Burke is fighting his own final battle. The leader who wanted to conquer a continent cannot conquer the next 10 yards. His body rebels. He collapses in the dirt, the red dust puffing up around him like a shroud. King tries to help him, but Burke is heavy, a dead weight of bone and stubbornness. He refuses to move. He knows the race is run. Night falls, bringing the freezing vacuum of the desert. Burke lies on his back, staring up at the Southern Cross. The stars are hard, bright diamonds that look down without pity. King offers to go shoot a bird, to find some food, anything to keep the fire of life burning. Burke forbids it. Even in death, he commands. He is terrified of dying alone. He makes King promise to stay. He demands the young soldier sit by his side and watch the light go out. Burke grips his revolver. His knuckles are white. He holds the weapon tight, a symbol of authority that is now useless against the encroaching dark. He gasps for air. His lungs are filling with fluid. Every breath is a jagged saw cutting through his chest. He struggles through the night, a broken king on a throne of dirt. Morning comes, cold and gray. The sun breaches the horizon, illuminating the vast emptiness of the gibber plains. Burke draws one last, rattling breath. His hand relaxes. The pistol slips from his fingers. The wind picks up, rolling a dry tumbleweed past the corpse. The leader is dead. The scientist is dead. And John King, the last man standing, is alone at the end of the world. John King turns away from the corpse of his commander. He leaves Robert O'Hara Burke to the ants and the wind. He drags his feet through the dust, retracing the steps of death back to the shelter where they left the scientist. It takes him days to cover the distance that a healthy man could walk in hours. He reaches the gunya. It is silent. William John Wills is exactly where they left him. But the spark is gone. The young man is cold. The diary lies beside a stiff hand. King buries him in the sand, scraping the earth with weak, trembling fingers until the face of his friend is covered. Now, the silence is total. The expedition is over. The empire has failed. But the instinct to live is a stubborn beast. King does not lie down to die. He crawls towards the smoke of the Yandruwanda campfires. He does not wave a pistol. He does not shout orders. He holds out empty, skeletal hands. He surrenders. The people Burke tried to shoot do not answer with violence. They answer with pity. They see a broken creature, a white ghost haunting their land. They take him in. The transformation is absolute. The Victorian soldier ceases to exist. King strips off the rotting rags of his uniform. The sun burns his skin dark. The women cover his sores with animal fat and ochre. He sleeps in the dirt, curled among the dogs for warmth. He eats what they eat. He learns the rhythm of the land. He becomes a shadow, drifting through the scrub, alive only because of the charity of those his leaders deemed savages. For 3 months, he lives between two worlds, a man who has forgotten the taste of bread and the sound of English. Then comes September. The ground vibrates with the hoofbeats of fresh horses. A relief party, led by Alfred Howitt, cuts through the bush. They are looking for heroes. They find a scarecrow. Howitt rides into the clearing and sees a figure sitting in the dust. The man is a skeleton draped in rags and animal skins. A hat made of gray felt sits crookedly on his head. He tries to stand, but he sways like a reed in a gale. He tries to speak, but his tongue is heavy and clumsy. He gasps out a name. I am king. The shock on the faces of the rescuers is the final indictment of the expedition. They give him tea. They give him sugar. They treat him like a porcelain doll that has been shattered and glued back together. But the horror is not over. They must collect the dead. They go back to the gunya. They dig up Wills. They go back to the desert. They find the bones of Burke, his pistols still rusting in the dirt nearby. They pack the remains into boxes. The men who wanted to cross the continent are now cargo. They return to Melbourne. The city that sent them off with cheers now receives them with weeping. It is a grand, black pageant. Thousands line the streets to watch the funeral procession. The colony needs martyrs, and it embraces the tragedy with a morbid hunger. Statues are built. Speeches are made. The incompetence is scrubbed away, replaced by a myth of noble sacrifice. But out in the vast, red silence of the interior, the truth remains. The coolabah tree at Cooper Creek still stands. The bark grows back slowly, but the scars remain. The word dig is still there, carved deep into the wood. It is not a monument to heroism. It is a tombstone for hubris. It stands as a silent witness to the three men who walked into the furnace of the continent, ignored the wisdom of the land, and paid the price with their lives. The wind blows through the leaves, whispering the story of the emptiness, and the desert waits for the next fool to try and conquer it.